In this video, we're going to run through 7 mistakes which are going to make or break your power endurance training. Pacing is important for 2 reasons. The first is that it's going to be a movement style, and actually being familiar with moving at the right pace is going to be something you want to transfer from your training through to your climbing. And the second one is that you want the work-rest ratio between those moves to be similar to how you're climbing on the real route, so that you're training endurance in the most specific way possible. The most obvious mistake we see with this is people climbing at a really fast rate. Now, I think the main reason this is because indoors you have very obvious handholds and sequences. It's really easy to read far ahead, and you've probably practiced that route or that circuit many times. So your pace ends up getting really, really fast. But outdoors, is that truly the same pace you're going to be climbing on your projects? Having said that, some people do climb at a really fast pace. So if you're training specifically for on-sighting or red pointing, consider if you're going to be climbing at different paces on these different styles of performance. When we talk about movement style, what we're trying to say is that you should be training your endurance on a style which is related to the climb you want to perform on. For example, I find that indoor climbing, if I'm training endurance, I find it really easy to either be quite dynamic and jumping between holds because they're big footholds or big handholds, or I find I can twist and drop knee and climb really passively. But if I'm honest, when I go climbing on the limestone around here, the footholds are really small and I have to be locking off in much slower movements trying to get to small holds. So the climbing style actually varies a lot different from inside to outside. So I'm going to try and force that climbing style of movement in my training so that it translates better to my outdoor performance. Similar to the previous point, terrain is going to make a massive difference to how your training translates to your performance. By terrain, there's probably 2 really big factors. That's going to be grip type and the angle that you're moving on. Firstly, grip type, you want your endurance to be specific. You might be familiar that you might get more pumped in your thumbs if you're working pinches, or maybe you're working full grip positions if you're on really small holds. The other thing is the angle of that wall is going to train your body differently. If you're generally climbing on steep routes, you're going to be thinking about working larger handholds, but working more through the bigger muscle chains in your body. And in that way, you're training the endurance of your whole body, not just your fingers and forearms. So make sure the angle is specific. Another one that really is important for me is if I'm training for overhanging routes, I get a little bit more scared in this style of terrain. So actually, it's a good mental process to working on routes in an overhang if that's the kind of stuff you want to do outside pre-season. If we're talking about power endurance, which you are using to get really prepared for performance outside, whether that be your season of outdoor climbing or a trip you're going on, you're going to want to make sure that your rest times between your sets are long enough that you can maintain really good quality attempts. This is an easy mistake to make if you're short on time or just really psyched to get on the wall. Generally what will happen is your first set will be really good, and then your next set you might fall off really early, or you might have to start dropping the grades as you go through those sets. But if you're trying to perform or getting ready for performance, you want to make sure that you're resting really long, maybe even 10-15 minutes between sets, so that each time you get on the wall, you're pushing for a proper performance. And this is more like what you might do outside. Having said that, we're not saying that failure within your power endurance training is something that you need to avoid. This can also be a great stimulus to really work your energy systems to the max. But if you're trying to work on performance, make sure that you're feeling very well recovered before you get on the wall. If you're someone that likes to cram in a bit of last-minute training before a trip or before your season comes to an open, this can also be a good way to sabotage your performance. Ideally, what we would have you do is train endurance in at least an 8 to 6 week lead up to a trip or a season to maximize your power endurance and really fine-tune that performance. But we also want to do something we call tapering before you would go away on a trip or a season. The thing with power endurance training is it's generally very high volume and it's also really tiring. So you want at least maybe a week of training before your trip where you really pull back on the amount you're doing. Just small amounts, you can still work the intensity, but this is going to help you perform. Understanding viable rests, in my opinion, is actually one of the make or break techniques when it comes to route climbing. So this is quite a complex topic as well. We have a few different things that come into account. First, your fitness. So are you able to recover on that hold? And if so, how long should you spend on that hold? But then we also get rests like knee bars or awkward positions when you're pressed into a wall, where maybe your fingers are recovering, but now the rest of your body is starting to tire. So how long should you spend in that rest position to get your finger strength back or your endurance back, but also not tire out your body and your core. This can be done in training, but also on the route is a good idea. So what you're trying to figure out here is how good does the hold need to be for you to be able to hang out there and recover, or if you're better, pushing through and trying to make it to a better rest or even to the top before you power out. This last one is less physical and more psychological, but it is probably actually the biggest, most common mistake climbers make when training para endurance for an outdoor season or trip. And that is getting in a good place with full practice. So I've made this mistake in the past where I try and get really strong, really fit to send the routes I want to. But in a way I'm getting fitter and stronger than I need for the routes, because actually the main thing holding me back is my head when I'm getting outside on routes. One of the best things my coach put into my training plan in the lead up to a sport climbing season was just one session a week where I went and did some full practice at the gym. There was no intention of training for physical attributes. It was purely to get comfortable on a rope pre-season, and arguably this had a bigger impact to how I was able to express my endurance while climbing on routes. How many of these mistakes have you made? Be honest with us and let us know in the comments below. If you want to see more about route training, check out this video over here. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.